Hey, it's me, SK Nicholas. Um, New video, first video after the last one, which was about the 4-year anniversary of the blog of myredabyss.com. This video is essentially it's an update video. The main update, the main thing, is that I've begun editing the third journal, and I've mentioned this previously. Um, but I'll reiterate it. Reiterate it. I'll go over it again. Um, the third journal, the third volume of a journal for damn lovers, will be comprised of prose taken from the blog, and that prose will be from March of 2017 to March of 2018. The third volume will stretch those will be comprised of prose from 13 months. And the plan was that once I got to the end of March of this year, I would then begin editing the third volume for release in sort of about October time, because the previous two volumes were released in October of 2016 and October of 2017. The main thing is that I've already begun editing the third volume. I was just getting itchy feet. The idea of just waiting another 6 weeks to then sort of begin once all of the text was in place, I got itchy feet. So for the last sort of 2 or 3 days, I've been editing the third volume. So essentially, I tend to write about 10,000 words a month for the blog. So I was going to end up with about 130,000 words for the third volume, which I was then going to sort of edit down to about 90,000. That's still going to happen, but as it is, I've begun editing already, and it's really exciting. It's really exciting so far. I've got two volumes to show for my efforts so far. The first volume and the second volume. And again, the first volume was where I started, it was the fledgling footsteps. The second volume, fuck me. The second volume was darker. It was a little bit darker, and it was more about those bubbles of time and space. It was more about sort of memory, if that makes sense. The third volume, for me, it draws upon both of those books. So it's more sort of current, I guess, but at the same time, I'm still dealing with bubbles of time and space, and I'm still sort of going back, if that makes sense. So the third volume, how will it be different? How will be different from the first two? What will make it sort of be worth reading in that sense? Well, I think that, again, when I was writing the first volume, I I didn't really know what I was doing, in a sense. I was just sort of, I was making it up. As I was going along, and it was only at the very end when I was editing that I kind of figured out, what I was doing. And the first volume is very sort of abstract in places. Oh, I keep fucking doing that. The first volume is very sort of abstract in many places, and it's good. I'm incredibly pleased with it. But obviously now I look at it and I think, oh, you know, uh, I was kind of lost in many areas. I started off and I knew I was obviously I was lovesick, but then I sort of drifted, and it took me a long time to really kind of find my voice. The second volume, it's me obviously hitting the ground running, but this is predominantly me going back and remembering uh, my life during sort of my mid to late 20s. It's me going back, creating these bubbles of time and space, and it's me just looking back into my past predominantly. They're not all of the time. The third journal was a mixture of that. Doing all the hand movements like Tony Blair. The third volume for me, I still go back, but it's not just limited to my mid to late 20s. I'm going back to my childhood, to my time at school, to my time at university, to my 20s. But then at the same time, I'm a lot more rooted in the here and now. So I might go back and look at the past, but I'll be doing so firmly rooted in the present moment. So I'm not just sort of going back and existing in the past. I'm in the past, but I'm here right now. And that element of time for me is been something that's fascinated me in the past kind of really, yeah, since sort of March of last year. Time. Time for me is something that's fascinated me because for many people, they when they think about time, they see time as being very distinct. So the past is the past. You can't affect the past, and a lot of people say, well, it's in the past, so move on, forget it. For me, though, when I was doing this, when I was going back and I was exploring my past and I was creating these bubbles of time and space, one of the things that really sort of impacted on me was the fact that for me, the past didn't feel dead. The past didn't feel like it was over and it was kind of just lifeless. For me, the past felt as though it kind of still existed. So one of the things that I've really focused on in the past kind of like year, basically, is this idea that time isn't just kind of very sort of fixed. It's the idea that the past kind of still does exist, and therefore you can kind of, even right now, you can influence the past as well as the past being able to influence the present, if that makes sense. um, and again, it's this idea of there are no boundaries in that sense. So it's when I kind of write at the minute, for me, the past, the present, the future, they they exist all in one moment, and that's had a massive sort of profound effect on me. There's a line from Twin Peaks which is, is it past? Is it future? I love that because I think it's this state of flux. That's what I love. It's this state of flux. It's the idea that, again, a lot of people will say, well, it's the past, it's done. I think no, there's a line from one of my favorite films, Magnolia, which is, you may be done with the past, but the past, isn't done with you. And I think that's worth sort of pointing out for me. So yeah, I've gone back and I've started editing the third journal. And so far, I've gone through the months of March, April, May, and June. And when I say edit, I've not really gone in with a fine tooth comb. I'm literally going through these pieces that they, up until the present moment. I mean, at the minute, I've got about 6 weeks left of writing from sort of the middle to the end of February and then all of March. So I've still got 6 weeks left of writing to produce for the third journal. But I've been going through the first 4 months, and I'm really excited because when I was editing the first journal, which is 2 years worth of prose, when I was editing this, there was so much rubbish. There was so much rubbish, and even the text that appears in here was in such a kind of a clumsy and underdeveloped state, because obviously I was just starting out. So it was a massive trawl to go through and edit. And I remember when I was editing it, it was a ball breaker. When I was editing the second journal, it was a lot easier. The quality was there, and because I knew I had in my mind more of an idea of what I was doing, it was easier to edit. Saying that though, there was still a lot of pieces that I would write that didn't really have an emotional core to them. I found that when I was going through editing the second journal, there were so many pieces that were well written, but they lacked that fundamental core. Editing the third journal so far, going through the first sort of 4 months worth of editing, I find that there's this level of consistency. I find that my writing has improved. Obviously, that's the main thing, isn't it? That the writing is improved. But so far, I'm finding that there's this consistency, there's this flow, and that for me is the most exciting thing. because it feels like I'm getting better. You know, if I was going to sort of if I was going through this third journal, editing this third journal, and I was kind of thinking, shit, it's all the same as the second journal, or I was going through thinking, God, there's so many pieces that don't make sense. There's so many pieces that don't have that kind of that core. I'd be worried. But instead, it's really nice because I'm going through and there's this I've got a good feeling. So in that sense, leading on from that, what will the third journal be about? Well, again, time. I'm exploring this idea of time, but again, it's more up to date. It's more up to date, and I think that it's again this. I'm going to sort of start losing myself in a minute. There are so many abstract pieces in here. There are so many abstract pieces, and when I say abstract, I mean pieces that just dealt with imagery without no kind of emotional core. In the second one, the pieces by and large tended to have an emotional core, but there was still that kind of abstract element in that a lot of the pieces, even the very first piece, Life is a Fear, it was still kind of out there. The third journal, for me, it moves away even further from the abstract, and I think it deals more in human connections. It deals in emotions. It deals in things that are grounded, essentially, and therefore, for me, it feels more like a traditional sort of journal, which I is what I want, you know. So I feel like it's more of a mature offering. I don't feel like I'm selling out. I don't feel like I'm just doing something that's, you know, going to be a lot more palatable. I just feel like it's more mature. I feel like this effort is, in a sense, it's the book I've been trying to write. Again, not to take anything away from these two journals. I wouldn't change them for the world. But I think the third journal will just be what I've been trying to create for the last few years. So hopefully I can kind of carry on editing, and maybe I bring the release date forward. Maybe I won't. Again, I was gonna have it sort of released in about October. Maybe I'll bring it forward a little bit if it's good. You know, if I feel good with it, I don't know. Loads of people seem to be dying recently. I made a I can't remember what I've talked about, but there was a kid that grew up near my grandparents who was my age. He died, and there was a guy that came into where I worked. He died. There's someone that I worked with. He died. I found out the other day, and it's like fuck. Everyone's dying. So that's kind of made me kind of think, shit, I need to get a move on. So in terms of the third journal, though, in terms of the cover, I've got an idea, a rough idea of what I want to do with the cover. First journal was based on a hand drawing that I did, and I put that I took a photo, put that photo into Photoshop, sort of tweaked it, added a bit of color. You know, it's a self-portrait. It's fine. This one, I wanted something a little bit more striking, a little bit more sort of dark. I think that sort of reflects the overall kind of feel of the book. And it's the eye, it's the all-seeing eye, because I was going back and I was looking at my past. That was kind of the idea behind it. The third journal for me kind of harks back a bit to this, in the sense that I created a drawing. I drew this picture a few years ago, and I gave it to someone. So I don't have the picture, but I have a photograph. So I'm hoping that if I put that photograph into Photoshop, then I can sort of maybe tweak it, maybe leave it alone and just put the sort of the title and whatever. When I put this image into Photoshop, it sort of, with all the dimensions, it kind of narrowed the image, which wasn't too bad with this because it's a bit of a weird, quirky image anyway. But if it narrows this sort of image that I've got in my mind, I don't know if I can use it. But the reason for that image, I'm not going to say what it is because I kind of want it to be a bit of a surprise. But it ties in with the theme of the third journal in terms of it being about love, and in terms of, you know, looking at the muse as well. So there's lots of different things for me to kind of think about. But yeah, the third journal. I'm really excited. I was quite nervous before I started editing it. I was genuinely quite worried. I was thinking, God, is this going to be any good? Is it going to be, is the writing going to be too familiar? Is it going to be too similar to what came before? But I so far I'm excited. I think that it's again, it's very sort of consistent. And as I've been going through, I haven't really seen that many typos. In terms of I've got it on a piece of paper. In terms of the first 4 months, I think I've deleted about 20 pieces. And when I was editing the second journal, after the first 4 months of editing, I deleted double that number, which again for me is encouraging because it means that I'm not writing as much shit. And in terms of those 20 pieces I've deleted so far, I don't think I've deleted anything where I've gone, oh God, what's this? I think half of it has been stuff where I've just gone, yeah, that's not really that great. And the other half is, this is too similar. There are too many similar pieces. So far, yeah, it's really good. And one of the reasons why I love editing is because it gives me something to bounce against. If I'm just working on the blog, that's it. But if I've got the journal as well, I can bounce between the two. And because I haven't finished writing all of the prose for the third journal, because I've still got these 6 weeks left, because I'm going through the journal, I can kind of it can influence the last 6 weeks worth of writing. I can see what I've done, in the first bit of the journal, and I can kind of think, oh, I might want to touch upon that again, or I can see this journey forming. Because part of the one of the things I love again about editing the journal is it's about taking that step back. Because when I'm blogging day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, sometimes it's so difficult to really see what I'm doing until I take that step back. So for me, when I edit the journal, it's like taking that step back and I can suddenly see the bigger picture, and I can suddenly sort of see like, oh, that's really good. I'm really pleased that I've done these types of pieces. And so far, the pieces that I'm pleased with are the pieces that have a story to them. They're the pieces where I've sat down and I've known what I'm going to write about. The weaker pieces are the state of mind pieces. It's the stuff where I've sat down and I've just written something and it's not really had that kind of that core. So it's really nice to go through and to sort of say, oh, I should write more stuff like this because this jumps out at me, and I should write less stuff that doesn't have that structure. So that's another a good reason. It's gonna, me editing ahead of time is gonna benefit the third journal in the long run, especially the end of the third journal. I think I'm really going to end it on a high. Um, so yeah, I'm going to edit the third journal, and provisionally I set that date in mind, October. But it might come out a bit earlier. It might come out in, September, maybe. Maybe even August. Again, I don't want to sort of get ahead of myself, but it's exciting. It's really exciting for me. And again, I feel like the third journal's going to do something. Not that I don't think the first two journals didn't do something, but I think it's going to be better. And that's the whole point of this, isn't it? That's the whole point of doing these journals. It's about becoming a better writer, and it's about developing myself. It's about trying to raise the bar each and every time. And every time I sit down to write a blog, it's about me trying to do something that was better than the piece that came before. And ultimately, with a third volume, naturally, it's about trying to better myself, to try to do something which is even stronger. And again, I think hopefully by sort of having these pieces that are more structured, that have these emotional cores in each and every piece, I think that it'll work. I think that and again, for me, it fits the title, Damned Lovers. It's about, the third journal is more and more about love. It's about, reflecting on past love, but at the same time reflecting, sort of being able to say that past love isn't necessarily dead and gone. It's not lost love in a sense. And it's that, again, it's that idea of time. Time's the key for the third one. The first one was Fledgling Footsteps. The second one was Bubbles of Time and Space. The third one is more about time and how time isn't. it isn't structured. It exists on all levels. It's that we exist in this state of flux, I think. So yeah, I'm SK. People are dying. I don't like it. Hopefully, the third journal might come out a bit quicker than anticipated. I'm excited by it. It's a Friday when I make this. When I'm as I'm making this right now, it's a Friday. Uh, I'll probably publish it on a Saturday. Um, that's it. It's quite nice outside. The weather's quite nice. I like the nice sort of weather. It depresses me. The winter months just make me want to stay in bed. I don't want to do anything. So when the weather gets a bit nice, and it makes me feel less of a hypochondriac. I don't feel as if I'm dying of so many different cancers and diseases when the weather's nice, which is good. So yeah, I'm SK. I'm SK Nicholas. It's yeah, the third journal. It's all go, and that's the main thing, isn't it? It's all about that search. It's all about just sort of doing it, keeping on doing it. That's the main thing. If you stop and if you start to doubt yourself, then yeah, you put yourself in a tricky situation. So I'm SK. Be good to yourself. Be nice and kind to animals, and yeah, enjoy the weather. I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching. See ya.